Get ready to hear some timeless historical radio broadcasts. Thank you for visiting Golden Age Radio. Listen to the complete NBC and CBS D-Day broadcasts on rebel.com/C/GAR. Support our veterans by visiting veteransradioministry.com. Let's honor their sacrifice. Thank you.
Good morning. This is C.F. McCarthy with your 8:30 News, brought to you by A&P Coffee, America's best-liked coffee. In order to give you the fullest measure of the invasion news, the regular commercial messages will be omitted from this A&P Coffee broadcast. More reinforcements are flying into France this morning. Still more are arriving by sea. The weight of Allied personnel and equipment continues to grow along that broad front between Le Havre and Cherbourg. There's also a possibility that we hold several isolated locations there on the continent. A definite front line has not yet shaped up inside the west wall, but we are inside. Penetrations have been made at several points, perhaps as far as 12 miles. One German report this morning says the invasion army has come into contact with strong enemy forces. The enemy force will have to be a strong one. A late report from Supreme Allied Headquarters says that a train of gliders 50 miles long has been flown into the Cherbourg Peninsula this morning. Our landing craft aren't being molested by German naval forces. The Germans admit that themselves. Further, NBC Stanley Richardson said this morning that there have been no American naval losses since those announced yesterday by President Roosevelt. In the third communique issued since the invasion began, General Eisenhower paid tribute to Allied forces and described invasion progress as satisfactory. Weather conditions had threatened to interfere with our invasion efforts, but there has been a very slight improvement today. German reports this morning, picked up here in the NBC newsroom, still speak of fighting around the Caen area. That is a deep penetration which has yet to be verified by Allied sources. Another report from the British Broadcasting Company says that our tanks are moving up to Caen, however. German broadcasts claim that fierce counterattacks have been hurled at the Allies east of Cherbourg, which is apparently a major Allied objective. Our communique does not mention Axis ground resistance nor disclose specific objectives of the various troops we've sent across. It said there was no further attempt at interference with the landing craft and that those coastal batteries still left in action are being bombarded by Allied warships. Most of the communique was devoted to the tremendous aerial assistance being given to Allied ground troops. It was the greatest aerial operation of all history. None will dispute that. 13,000 sorties were flown. And there's still no indication of concentrated opposition from the Luftwaffe. A Berlin broadcast heard by NBC monitors last night declared that the Luftwaffe was devoting most of its strength to attacks on shipping. But later enemy reports indicate even that phase of the defense had been called off. One attack was attempted against the beach forces, but it proved abortive. 4 out of 12 German bombers were destroyed. Supreme Headquarters says it is holding up information on our exact positions because the Germans are fishing for information. One Nazi broadcast, for instance, has intimated that we've made a new landing northeast of Le Havre. Some of those German guns, located 150 miles north of Le Havre, fired across the Dover Straits this morning for a period of 2 hours, shaking coastal towns on the English side. The batteries were located between Boulogne and Calais. Allied air forces have taken supreme command of the air over invaded France. And as we mentioned before, 13,000 sorties were flown in a single day, not including the attacks which have already started this morning. Last night, more than 1,000 British bombers poured a stream of explosives upon German reinforcements as they moved toward the fighting front. As they returned, United States raiders headed over the Dover Straits for the continent. British 4-engine bombers also hit Ludwigshafen in the Reich with an estimated total of 6,000 tons of bombs. In connection with aerial warfare, there is news today that a full report on the shooting of British prisoners is being prepared by the German government. Just what claims Berlin may attempt to make are not certain. However, Anthony Eden told the House of Commons today that the Swiss government is to receive the report from Germany this week. Although the German radio broadcast the first news of the Allied invasion, it has been consistently confused almost from that very moment. Here are some highlights from German radio broadcasts this morning. Berlin radio claims that Germans wiped out 2 British airborne battalions last night near Deauville. There's been no Allied confirmation of this report. Another Berlin report says that German parachute men were used to combat our own airborne troops by dropping them onto Allied gliders. These Nazi parachutists were supposed to have set the gliders on fire before gliding on down to earth themselves. At least one German officer is dead of heart failure, but whether it's a result of our invasion or just a coincidence is not now known. The officer was a General Glöcker. Another Berlin warning to the French people who would aid the underground. Germany warns the French that they will shoot all those on the streets after dark and before sunrise. Still more enemy reports. Berlin dispatches to Stockholm say that 6 Allied aerodrome divisions totaling 25,000 men have been landed on the French invasion coasts since the start of operations. The DNB agency admits that fresh reinforcements have been flown into France by Allied forces, but says that they were immediately engaged by Nazi ground forces. Hard fighting is still in progress, according to Berlin. The report included a claim that 200 English prisoners had been captured. Although overshadowed by events in Western Europe, another great Allied offensive drives on this morning in Italy. The German army there continues in full flight. Our troops have punched their way 10 miles beyond Rome, and they're now only 5 miles from the shore of Lake Bracciano. Another column has driven an equal distance northwest of Rome and is cleaning up enemy rear guards. These forces are both of the Fifth Army, the troops which took Rome. To the southeast, Eighth Army troops face battles that are more furious as they push across the mountainous terrain. New Zealand troops driving toward Avezzano have captured Bolsorano, 6 miles north of Sora. Fifth Army troops this morning received the congratulatory messages of their commander, General Mark Clark, for their capture of Rome. General Clark told his men, "You have again proved you form a great Allied fighting team, ready to launch new assaults on new objectives lying between us and complete victory." British General Alexander, the Allied commander-in-chief in Italy, has broadcast news of our late gains to the Italian patriots still in occupied Italy. General Alexander declared that the strength of the German armies had been broken at last and urged the Italian guerrillas to do everything in their power to hinder the German retreat. The toll of Nazi prisoners taken in the Italian offensive now stands at 18,000, and more are coming in hourly. Mediterranean-based planes joined the assault on Hitler's Europe again yesterday with attacks on 4 Romanian towns and targets in Yugoslavia. 34 enemy planes were destroyed against the loss of 16 of our bombers and 17 other aircraft. Targets in northern Italy were bombed last night, but their identity was not revealed at once. However, Berlin says this morning that our planes hit Genoa and several points along the Italian Riviera. Berlin adds that the attacks were heavy bombings. Reaction to invasion operations has been one of jubilation in all the Allied capitals, but probably nowhere was it greeted with such cheers as in Russia. Moscow newspapers devoted all their foreign news today to invasion dispatches, and special columns by military observers took up more than 50% of the columns. Tuesday, June 6th, will be a great day in history, according to Red Star, the organ of the Soviet armies. We cannot overestimate the significance of this leap across the Channel, carried out in a masterly fashion by one of the greatest contemporary strategists. That's also a quotation from Red Star. The moment was well chosen and exploited, and Germany is now facing deadly peril, receiving crushing blows from the east and west. Pravda's military analyst cites American figures estimating there were 55 German divisions in France, and says the Germans might have to depend solely on counterblows. Pravda also carried a 3-column picture of Eisenhower before an American flag. All newspapers in Moscow followed the battle with detailed maps. There were parties celebrating the invasion, and by early evening all the vodka had disappeared from commercial stores. Only a few hours earlier, Premier Stalin had wired Prime Minister Churchill the congratulations of Russia on Rome's capture. Churchill, incidentally, sought to accompany the invasion forces to the French coast, as revealed today by an Australian correspondent. The incident was disclosed aboard a ship by Admiral Ramsay, who said that Churchill agreed not to go along, only after it was pointed out that the extra work in safeguarding him would be a hindrance to the troops. Here is a bulletin. Berlin radio declared today that a second daylight invasion attempt at Pas-de-Calais was opposed this morning by German long-range artillery. The heavily bombed Pas-de-Calais area lies across the narrowest stretch of the Channel from Dover on the English coast and is northeast of the Cherbourg Peninsula. News of the invasion has also been cheered in Chongqing and other Allied capitals, but perhaps one of the greatest impressions was made on neutral Portugal. That country has agreed to stop all war aid to the Nazis. Portugal, in contrast with Spain, has imposed a complete ban on export and production of wolfram from Germany. Fighting still rages in other sections of the world, although at rates but scant attention this morning. In Russia, where the Red Army is poised for a new offensive supplementing the Western invasion, there has been a pronounced let-up in German activity. For 8 days, the Nazis have been counterattacking near the Romanian city of Iasi. They were unable to score important gains, but continued to battle furiously. Today, those counterattacks are at an end, and a Nazi commentator declares that a strong Soviet offensive army has taken several positions on the Lower Dniester River. Ready to give the Russians a hand are bombers and fighters of the United States Air Forces based in Russia. These flyers hit a German airport at Galati, Romania, in their operations yesterday. 2 of our planes were lost at a cost of 6 German aircraft. American flyers returning to their bases in Britain heard the first news of the invasion over their own radios. There's good news from the Pacific War front today also. Columns of the American 6th Army are converging on those cliffs which protect Mockmere Airfield on Biak Island. They're only a mile and a half from the airfield itself. Still another Allied column is moving up from the rear toward the Jap positions. 2 more Jap vessels were sunk off the Dutch New Guinea coast as our Allied flyers keep up that southwest Pacific pace they've set for themselves. Over in Asia, Jap troops have finally been forced to withdraw from the Kohima area in India. That attack carried out months ago in what apparently was a Japanese effort to cripple our supply lines turned from a surprise assault to an ignominious defeat. The Japs are withdrawing rapidly from their Kohima positions and have suffered heavy losses. One of the largest collective prayers ever uttered was sent forth by President Roosevelt and untold millions of Americans last night. It was a prayer for an early triumph over the unholy forces of our enemy, a prayer for the more than 5 million sons, brothers, fathers, and friends overseas. The President wrote the supplication in his White House study on Invasion Eve while he was waiting for the signal that the invasion had begun. It was translated into 28 different languages for foreign broadcasts, while copies in English were being distributed throughout the United States. As the President spoke, he was joined by families in their homes, small community gatherings, and large city congregations. 50,000 persons gathered in New York's Madison Square. Other crowds overflowed the Boston Common and Detroit's Cadillac Square. In these words they prayed, "Give us strength in our daily tasks to redouble the contributions we make in the physical and material support of our armed forces." Led by Mr. Roosevelt, himself with 4 sons in uniform, Americans prayed that their country's sons might be led straight and true, for they will need thy blessings. Their road will be long and hard. Lead us to a sure peace, a peace invulnerable to the schemings of unworthy men. Lead us to a peace that will let all men live in freedom, reaping the just rewards of their honest toil. Then, with a pause between each word, the President concluded, "Thy will be done, Almighty God. Amen." The country has gotten somewhat back to normal today, the day after D-Day. At least the normal routine of life has been resumed, even though the hearts and minds of Americans may be far away with the boys on the battlefronts. Theaters, baseball parks, business houses, and radio all have resumed a normal schedule. But there is another story in the news this morning which indicates how Americans rallied on D-Day to back the invasion. Blood donations jumped to an all-time high, tripling the usual number of donors. And war bond sales increased as much as 75% as Americans rallied behind its Army of Liberation. The Red Cross all over the country reports that it is making appointments weeks in advance to accommodate blood donors. In New York, blood banks reported a 300% increase in the number of donors. At Detroit, the Red Cross estimated blood donations had increased 40% above the previous high. About 17,000 persons volunteered, and bond sales at Detroit skyrocketed at war plants throughout the metropolitan area. It was the same all over the country, particularly in war plant areas. Well, according to the official forecast of the United States Weather Bureau for New York City and vicinity, today will be partly cloudy and moderately warm with patchy sunshine throughout the day. With the highest temperature about 78 degrees, the Weather Bureau says it will be a fairly nice day with that sunshine comes in. Tonight, fair, rather cool, with the lowest temperature 60 degrees in the city and 55 degrees in the suburbs. Tomorrow, fair, with moderate temperatures. The high today will be about 78 degrees as against the high yesterday of 77. And there will be dry air and moderate winds prevailing throughout today and tomorrow. The official temperature now is 64 degrees. And with a 19-mile wind blowing and a humidity of 60%, it's rather cool this morning. And now a brief summary for those of you who may have tuned in late. Heavy reinforcements are being rushed into France to bolster the Allied invasion, both by sea and by air. In Italy, victorious American troops have driven 10 miles beyond Rome. In India, the Japs are withdrawing from the Kohima area. And that's the top news of the hour. I'll be back tomorrow with more news, same time, same station. Meanwhile, this is C.F. McCarthy reminding you that for finer flavor every time, it's time to turn to A&P Coffee. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Don Goddard's News at Noon, 12 o'clock sharp, follows your regular morning radio entertainment programs. Listen to Don Goddard at noon over WEAF, New York. The following program is transcribed. The West Disinfecting Company, makers of CN, presents Modern Romances.
Love's tender glances bring modern romances. The story's the same through the years.
The thoughts of lovers are like long, bright shawls, wrapped around each other with tender care. We bring you a story of love from the magazine Modern Romances.
The story's the same through the years.
I imagine a lot of you women are faced with quite a problem today when it comes to housekeeping, because gone are the days when a maid took care of the cleaning and a few telephone calls ordered the food supplies. Now it's a question of house cleaning yourself and then spending a few hours doing your shopping. Well, every little time saver is a help, and we're all anxious to hear about them. Now, if you've already used CN for cleaning, of course, you know how efficient it is, how quickly a solution of 2 teaspoonfuls of CN in a quart of water makes dirt and grease disappear from floor, sinks, stoves, and tile, and bathroom fixtures. But now a word of advice to you people who haven't yet used CN, or who might have a bottle on the shelf that you've forgotten about. CN is a 3-purpose cleanser. It cleans, disinfects, and deodorizes all at the same time. No scrubbing brush or hard work is necessary. Just a rag or mop dipped in the CN solution, and you're all set for the cleanup job. And don't forget, floors cleaned with CN are disinfected as well. CN gets down into cracks and crevices, removing dirt and helping kill many unseen germs. Now, when refuse pails become a nuisance, help combat odors by sprinkling the refuse daily with a solution of CN. The pail should be washed out at least twice a week with the CN solution, and a little left in the can to help prevent the breeding of many insects. CN comes in the orange carton with a gable top. So get your bottle of CN today.
And now, for today's story, There's No Profit in Loving, selected from the magazine Modern Romances. Our story opens on a highway at night. Standing in the glare of the headlights of an approaching truck, 16-year-old Wanda Malini is frantically waving her hand.
Hello. What in thunder are you doing standing in the middle of the highway at this time of night?
Oh, I'm glad it's you. I was hoping it was your truck. Please take me along and let's get going before Pa discovers I'm gone.
You running away?
Yes.
What's the matter? Your father been beating you up again?
Yes, he gave me a whipping on account of that fire that started in our kitchen the other night.
The one I helped you put out?
Yeah.
But it wasn't your fault. No, I thought that one poke I took at your dad when he started cuffing you settled the matter.
He's not used to having people stand up to him and made him mad, I guess. That's why he took it out on me. This was the worst he ever gave me.
Well, I suppose I owe you something for taking punishment on account of me, but I don't like this business of helping you run away.
Pa won't care. He never did like me. Maybe because Ma died when I was born. My 4 brothers can help with the farm, so he'll be all right.
Oh, I'm not worrying about your pa. I'm worrying about you.
Oh, I'll get along. I passed the speed test in typing last year at school. I'm going to get a job and make a lot of money. I'm going to be independent so I can have all the things I want and nobody can hurt me.
Yeah, but meanwhile, you got to have a place to live. Oh, I know. I'll take you home to my mother. She'll know what to do with you. Mom's got an answer for everything.
Mrs. Harrison, Ted's mother, was wonderful to me. In a little while, I got a job doing typing and shorthand. It didn't pay much, but it had possibilities. The Harrisons let me help with the housework for my board. I never told them that I really had $160 of my own. I had quit school the year before I ran away and got a job for $15 a week. I pretended to Pa that I was only getting 10 and saved the other 5 every week. I didn't feel that I was cheating him because I did all the housework and washing and ironing at night. I did feel mean about not telling Mrs. Harrison and Ted. But I wanted to hold on to my savings and keep adding to them as much as I could. When a girl is as fiercely determined to succeed as I was, something is bound to happen. In a few months, I was made private secretary to the junior partner of the firm. That same week, something else important happened. We had just finished eating one night, and when I got up to clear the dishes, I stumbled accidentally against Ted. He caught me to keep me from falling, and suddenly, in the few seconds I was in his arms, I knew I loved him. Ted must have felt the same way because...
Wanda, I'm darned if I don't love you.
Hey, listen, Tarzan, you've wrecked my collar, and there's lipstick all over you. What's the big idea of turning Romeo all of a sudden?
Gosh, Wanda, it struck me like a thunderbolt. Realizing that I love you, I mean. I guess I've loved you since the night I found you standing on the highway. Say, darling, could you care for a hick like me? You know I'm going to industrial school on my time off. I'll graduate in a few months now, and then maybe I can get a good job in an auto plant. I don't intend to be a truck driver all my life. Good mechanics draw swell pay. Whew, what a speech. Guess you'd call it a proposal. How about it, honey?
Well, we'll talk about it when you get that swell mechanics job.
Oh, baby. Well, I work now.
When Ted got his job in an automobile plant, I married him. And for 2 years after our marriage, I continued with my work. I let Ted pay all the bills while I kept on salting away my earnings. When I found out I was going to have a baby, I was furious. Although my bank account ran into 4 figures, I wanted more. Now my drive to the top would have to stop while I had my baby. But the moment the nurse laid little Nancy in my arms, my heart melted with love and adoration. And then, when she was several weeks old, we made the tragic discovery that our baby was stone deaf. I took her to deaf and dumb school every morning, and she learned to talk in the flat, toneless voice of the deaf and to read our lips. Time went by, and then, just as we were climbing steadily toward financial security, the depression came like a bolt from the blue. Our savings were wiped out. Ted lost his job, and after all the years of working and scrimping, I was right back where I started from. I managed to find a job that paid hardly enough for food and necessities while Ted took care of Nancy and the house. We tried to joke about it, but as time went on, tension and bitterness grew beneath the surface, and we quarreled often and violently. And then one day I came home to find Ted turning cartwheels in the living room, while Nancy, wide-eyed with delight, stood in the doorway.
Hiya, honey.
Ted Harrison, have you gone crazy?
Daddy has a surprise, Mommy.
I'll say I have. Wanda, I've got a job. I've got a job.
What?
They've taken me back at the plant. Same salary, Wanda, same salary. I can't believe it, but it's
Oh,
true.
Ted, I'm so glad, so glad.
Now we can live again. Wanda, you'll give up a job, won't you?
Yes, Mommy. Stay home with Nancy.
You've supported this family long enough. It's time you had a little rest and fun.
Oh, but Ted, we ought to start saving again. And if I were...
Save? Well, what's the use of saving? The banks failed us once, didn't they? And how do we ever know what's going to happen in this screwy world? Or resign your darn job and let's do some fancy living for a change.
Why save? There was conflict and turmoil in my mind when Ted raised that question. The old fierce self that wanted to save and save fought against a new, equally fierce self that wanted to spend and have fun and forget the years of hardship and worry. The temptation was too much. I gave in to Ted and resigned my job. From slaving and saving, we turned to spending and having fun. We were caught up in a whirlpool of social activities that left no time for sober thought, no time for real companionship or family life. We were riding high until one evening, as we came downstairs together, prepared to leave for a dinner date, Nancy, her face strangely still and set, stopped us.
Mother, you promised to take me to the magic show tonight with Daddy.
Oh, darling, I'm awfully sorry. I forgot all about it. But it's too late for us to back out now. I tell you what, Daddy and Mother will take you to the zoo on Sunday. You'd like that, wouldn't you, darling?
No, Mother. I like the magic show.
Oh, it's a shame, dear, but be a good girl and stay home. Now, here's 50 cents. Tomorrow, on your way home from school, spend it on anything you like.
50 cents to pay for her disappointment. The hurt look on Nancy's patient little face haunted me all the way to the Markleys. We were just sitting down to the first course of our dinner when the phone rang. The maid touched Ted on the shoulder and whispered something to him. I saw his face grow pale and tense, so I excused myself and followed him to the telephone in the next room. Ted, what is it?
Something terrible has happened. Hello? What hospital? Yes, we'll be right down. It's Nancy. She was hit by a truck a few minutes ago. They've taken her to Hurley Hospital.
I'll never forget that endless ride across town. And then the hospital at last, and the great stone steps, and a long, dim hall with the heavy smell of ether in the air, and the sympathy in the eyes of the nurse who met us.
They've finished with her in the operating room. She's right in this room here. But
let me see her. Oh, Nancy. Oh, my baby.
It's impossible to rouse her.
Will she... Do you think she'll be...
Well, there's a very bad skull fracture.
Oh, darling, wake up. Don't leave us. Nancy, Nancy. But our child was beyond my pleading. Seeing the magician had meant so much to her that she'd evidently started for the theater by herself. Powerless to hear, she'd been unaware of the great truck coming toward her. When the frightened driver picked her up, he found the 50-cent piece under her unconscious little body. Ted and I were face to face with an agony so terrible we didn't know how to meet it. Suddenly, we were staring aghast at the emptiness of our lives. Months have gone by since then, and slowly, painfully, Ted and I have found our way back from the wilderness of our grief. And through it has come a wisdom which I think is summed up in what Ted said to me one day as he was staring thoughtfully out of the window, watching a pair of robins.
Look at that robin's nest, Wanda. The same pair have built there ever since we lived here. They don't build a fancy gilt-edged nest one year and a lopsided ramshackle affair the next. Why don't we build our lives the way they do, sanely, strongly, not allow ourselves to swing with the tide of circumstances? Depression one minute, inflation the next.
I think I understand what you mean, Ted. To strike a happy medium is the thing, isn't it?
Exactly, darling.
You know, Ted, for the first time in my life, I feel that my feet are planted firmly on the right road. Nancy's going opened my eyes to the real values of life. I know now that all I want or need is to keep faith in the goodness of God and to have your love, dearest.
That you'll always have.
This has been an adaptation of There's No Profit in Loving, a story from the magazine Modern Romances. And now a word from our announcer.
Are you facing a lot of housework? Well, as a matter of fact, Monday, wash day. Tuesday, you may iron. Wednesday and Thursday, you're probably busy with the Red Cross and other war activities. And then comes Friday to get ready for the weekend. And on top of that busy schedule is your daily household cleaning problem. A good solution is a CN solution. CN, the concentrated cleansing disinfectant, cuts grease so that you can wipe it away in a jiffy. And CN disinfects and deodorizes as it cleans. Yes, there's no doubt about it. CN is the solution to your cleaning problems. On Friday, we'll bring you a modern romance titled My Daughter's Marriage. Dee Waldo marries Chris while she still is in college, because he is in the Army and soon to be sent overseas. And her doting father, displeased with her hasty marriage, secretly plans to make her forget her husband so she'll marry the man he's chosen for her. And it takes his sister, Louise, and a letter left by his dead wife to show him the error of his ways and convince him that he's making his daughter really unhappy. Only then does Bruno Waldo resolve to be a real father to Chris as well as to his daughter, Dee.
Love's tender glances bring modern romances, the stories that sing through the years.
A story of that sublime, all-absorbing emotion we know as love has been dramatized for you from the pages of the magazine Modern Romances.
Soft light and music are part of the scheme.
This transcribed program was presented by the West Disinfecting Company, makers of CN, and came to you from Radio City, New York.
following program will also be heard in Canada by shortwave in Mexico, Central America, and South America, and from coast to coast in the USA, it's Mirth and Madness.
Hey, you! Are you listening? Hi, neighbor, what do you know? What do you say? Hi, neighbor, please away. Come on and shake my hand and let up into the rest. It makes you feel so grand to get the chill on your chest. With Jack Kirkwood, your moody, meandering master of ceremony, inviting you to wander into another of our woefully weary walkathons, a wobbly wiki-up of well-worn witticism and weather-beaten waggery, with his wistful wool-gatherer waddling through a wispy web of wonderful wackiness and wizened witchery, and accompanied on his weaving way by the wall-eyed wand-waver and his wagon-load of witless wonders. So wait on in, won't you, while we whisk over and whisper to the wizards to warm up an overture. Whack it, man, whack it. Is overturned by Scorch Miller and his 9 old men, and good it was, too. With a band like that, Irving could get in anywhere, like Leavenworth, Atlanta, any place like that there. Now, I'd like to have the audience in the aisles today, not going out, though.
I'd like to have an audience with the boss.
I'd like to have an audience, but I'm sorry you can't see the boss today. He just jumped out the window. The elevator wasn't working.
Well, why didn't he walk down?
28 flights of stairs. He might slip and hurt himself.
I never thought of that. I'm satisfied.
I'm Kirkwood.
I'm Gray.
Well,
how do you do?
Do you mind if I take a slap at that hula skirt? My wife told me to be sure and hit the hay.
No, not at all, but I'd sooner hit the road.
It's a treat to beat your feet on the Mississippi mud. Ah, dear old Mississippi. Oh, yes. That's where I met my first sweetheart. I remember I took her out to Lover's Leap and kissed her.
What did she do?
She leaped.
I'll bet you were a romantic pair.
Ah, yes, indeed. When we went to the theater, we were a regular Romeo and Juliet. I'd sit in the orchestra seats and she'd sit in the balcony.
Ah, romance.
Ah, love.
Ah, sweet mystery of life, at last I found you.
Where you been hiding, you little rascal, you?
Well, I must be off.
You ain't kidding.
Oh, now, I beg to take issue with you.
Well, all right, but you'll have to take it out of the studio. You take that end, I'll take that. There we are. Place looks much better, too.
Well, I'll be running along now. I have to do my part toward the scrap metal drive.
What are you going to do?
Try to pick up a platinum blonde.
What about your wife? Oh, that old thing. Yes. You shouldn't speak of your wife like that. It's kind of a low trick.
Hello, Kirkwood.
Hello, Trick. How's Mrs. Trick?
She gave me a grand slam this morning.
I thought you were wearing a new bridge. Nice woman, though. English, isn't she?
No, I think she's a marmoset.
That's a monkey.
I think she's a marmoset.
Marmoset?
A marmoset. Marmoset from Armatil, Parley-Boo. A marmoset from Armatil, Parley-Boo. A marmoset from Armatil, she hasn't been kissed to 40 yet. Hinky-dinky Parley-Boo.
And so we wave a fond farewell to the dusty little village of Washout on the Line, with its good-natured natives and its denatured medicine men. We climb aboard our old fishing barge and go barging downstream while the natives throw garlands from the shore. We pull Mr. and Mrs. Garland into our boat and speedily head for the open sea, and even as we reach the deep water, over the sound of the breakers can be heard the native song of farewell. Ni bin shia, no malo, bingo ya boy bejo, bingo ya boy bejo. Which when freely translated means come back, and we'll see that you are placed in the middle of the griddle. And as we steer past the floating driftwood and debris, you remember driftwood and debris did a high diving act on the pole-eye circuit. Imagine them drifting this far. We are suddenly startled by the horrible scream of the weird Kanaka foozle gruff, which we catch in our nets and discover to our dismay is Don Reed singing Long Ago and Far Away. Well, you can't get too far away to suit me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Long ago and far away, I dreamed a dream one day down my spine. Aladdin's lamp is mine. The dream I dreamed was not denied me. Just one look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was just one look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. That took me right back to my home on the prairie. I've never seen a prairie as flat as that song. Of course, I'm kidding. Says here. And that bit of bicarbonated baritone brings us to the Madhouse Tabloid.
The Madhouse Tabloid is on the air with a big story on the political scene. And here's your tabloid commentator, Phineas Rubber Stamp Deadline. Shoot the vote to me, goat.
Howdy, Miss Daly City. I'll be back in the rolls with the polls.
Pinball on the tilt, California. Honest Jack Kirkwood campaigns for re-election.
Hi, diddly folks. With the election only a few days off, Jack Kirkwood has been campaigning night and day for his favorite candidate, Jack Kirkwood. As mayor of the Gas House District for the past 4 years, Kirkwood has succeeded in cleaning out the city hall so that now there's practically nothing left down there but a couple of old benches. He's now running for re-election, and today our star reporter will give you a bird's-eye view of the entire campaign. He's a crook. He pays, buys every vote. He's 4 or 5. Take it away, Adelbert.
The whole town is buzzing with politics.
Politics.
Listen to what some of our citizens are saying about Kirkwood, the people's pal. First, a word from a prominent merchant.
I want Jack Kirkwood for mayor of Pinball because I've decided to move to New York.
Well, here's an old maid of 75. Listen to what she has to say.
I want Jack Kirkwood because at my age I'll settle for anybody. Whee!
Well, now we bring you the voice of the man in the street.
I ain't getting up out of this gutter to vote for nobody.
And here is what the president of the local chamber of commerce has to say.
We want Jack Kirkwood.
And here's what the boys down at the city hall are saying.
Say, did you ever hear the one about the fellow who went to the doctor? He thought he was...
All over the city, enthusiasm for Kirkwood is at a feverish pitch. The people are having a terrific celebration. You can hear them now. Listen! And they've been carrying on like that for hours. Now, we take you to the big Kirkwood rally in Union Square. First, a few words from Mr. Luscious Drooper, president of the Civic Betterment League. Mr. Drooper.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
And now, I want to introduce the chief speaker of the evening, Mr. Ward Heeler, chief heel of the KA, or Kirkwood Association. Mr. Heeler.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put my cards right under the table. I'm speaking for a man who has a heart of gold, nerves of steel, and an iron constitution. So if he isn't elected, we can turn him over to the scrap metal drive. Just look at the candidate, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever seen such character in a face? Have you ever seen such a face on a character? Just let me ask you, who paved our streets?
Jack Kirkwood.
Who gave us our parks?
Jack Kirkwood.
Who took the pinball machines out of the drugstore?
Jack Kirkwood.
He did, the dirty crook. Oh, Who gave you the library?
Jack Kirkwood.
Who gave you the museum?
Jack Kirkwood.
Who gave you Jack Kirkwood?
The museum.
Who will really benefit most if Kirkwood is elected?
Jack Kirkwood!
Right. Kirkwood is a family man. He loves to hear the patter of childish feet. In fact, he's held so many babies in the last 2 weeks, he's learned how to juggle them. He's never had his hand in anybody's pocket. All he wants is a chance. Why, when Kirkwood was elected 4 years ago, there were more rackets in this town than you could shake a stick at. And what did Kirkwood do about it? Do you know what he did?
No, what did he do?
Went out and got more sticks. But why should I stand here telling you why you should vote for the People's Pal? Let the record speak. Well, let it speak. Put on the record. And now, before we close the rally with our campaign song, would any young lady in the audience like to kiss me? Any old lady in the audience like to kiss me? Would any man in the audience like to kiss me? Would any old cocker spaniel in the audience like to kiss me?
You'd kiss a cocker spaniel to get votes?
Why not? They go to the polls, too.
Who wouldn't vote for Kirkwood for mayor? You'll be the goat for he'll get in your hair. He's the candidate the city's mad about. So go to the polls, but hide your roads, for he's the loud who'll clean you out. He's got a platform that looks pretty strong, but it's full of termites, won't last very long. So cast your ballot one or maybe more, baby. Kirkwood's the jerk that we're voting for.
Very good. A goodie, fellas. That will spearmint lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight. That's played by Irving Miller and his salon group. Just returned from a successful engagement in the gold room of Feinschreiber's Flop House. Feeding the flop for 4 bits. And that brings us to our most distinguished guest.
Ah, yes, here he is. A romantic old quince with his extra set of double chints. And his ever welcome advice to the lovelorn, Dr. Hartburn. Lovely day, Doctor.
Beautiful indeed, William. On days like this, I always think of an old girl of mine, Les Norsemorsville. Les Norsemorsville's Mahoovelstrugel. What a gorgeous babe she was. What a head. Of course, it was horrible to look at it, but it was a head. She was the only girl I ever saw with 4 arms. 2 faced one way and 2 faced the other. Very handy. She could scratch herself anywhere. She had a figure like a 14-year-old girl, but by the time she gave it back, it was all bumpy. She finally decided to give me the brush off, and with her mustache, she could do it, too, believe me. She didn't like the climate. She wanted to go to a warmer climate, so I told her where to go. I haven't seen her since. I bet she likes it in Southern California, too. I remember it well. How wonderful it was to pick oranges right off the trees. They told me as they picked out the buckshot at the hospital. But I'll keep on searching till I find the right girl. Oh, there must be some girl in this world for me. Oh, it's awful, isn't it? Don't expect me to stay here and listen to that. That's awful. Where are you going? That's worse than one of your souls, Gray. I'm getting out of here. Where's my motorcycle? Oh, all right, here we go, baby. Turpentine, Willie. There goes the traffic bell. that one. Thanks, lads. That was Hot Time in the Old Town, as arranged by Maestro Miller, whose latest book, Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Lady Harpists, has become a bestseller in all the bestsellers in town. And...
Oh, the captain cried, all hands below. Belay there, lads, here comes a blow. The radio brought the warning through that the Madhouse Show presents part 2. A tickle, 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 tickle. It's the Madhouse Show, and here's part 2.
Now, lovers of lilting lunacy, will you join us at the Poet's Nook?
Greetings, friends. Won't you come in for a kindly thought?
Ah, yes. Here he is, our poet so balmy, shaped like a boiled salami. Ah, but listen, music, how enduring. And during this part of the program, I always go out and have a smoke. I just can't take it.
There's the wonderful scent of the lilacs, the essence of sweet perfume, the mystic spell of the incense in the garden where roses bloom, the aroma of cooking cabbage, and the odor of burning tar. But I'm here to tell that there ain't no smell like that of a cheap cigar.
Today.
And now for another little homespun episode in our heartwarming story of Just Plain Folks, the story of Sadie Blackgirl, Riveter. Today we find our heroine and her boyfriend Roger in a drugstore. They have had 2 strawberry sundaes apiece. Sadie has bought a new lipstick, and Roger has tried to buy a bottle of bourbon. And as they are about to leave the store, Roger remembers that he needs some paste. So he steps up to the nearest counter and says...
Hey, mister, I want a tube of paper glue.
Paper glue?
Yeah, I want to mend a torn page in a book.
You should use Scotch tape for that, sir. I have some right here.
I don't want Scotch tape. I want glue.
Shh, don't be so loud, Roger.
I'm only trying to be helpful, sir. You shouldn't paste the pages. You should use...
Listen, if you don't give me what I want, I'll climb over the counter and get it myself.
Say, nobody can talk to me like that. Now scram before I lose my temper and hang one on your jaw.
If you don't give me that glue in 2 seconds, I'll get it myself, you big bluff.
Brother, you're begging for it, and you're going to get it.
Uh-oh, Roger, I don't think he's bluffing.
Will Roger get the paste he's asking for? Tune in next week, folks. We don't know. Fanfare number 4 is played by Irving Miller and his triple threat termites, sounding just as good as if they tuned up before the broadcast. Well, almost. Anyhow, it brought us over to our servicemen special, and up steps pretty little Julie Conway to delight us with Somebody Loves Me. Well, no doubt, baby, no doubt. They should.
Somebody loves me. I wonder who. I wonder who it can be. Somebody loves me. I wish I knew who it can be. Worries me. With every guy that passes by, I shout, hey, maybe you could learn to be my loving baby. Somebody loves me. I wonder who. Maybe it's you. Somebody loves me. I wonder who. I wonder who it can be. Somebody loves me. I wish I knew who it can be. Worries me. With every guy that passes by, I shout, hey, maybe you could learn to be my loving baby. Maybe somebody loves me. I wonder who. Maybe, baby, it's you.
Little Theater.
Today, the Madhouse comedy, drama, and There Must Be a Better Way to Make a Living players present their own brilliant version of Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. As the curtain rises, we find the Sultan speaking with his daughter. Curtain.
Say, Papa, when are you going to break down and get me a husband?
I'm have to break down any minute, but I don't know about the husband. What happened to the last man I found for you anyway? I left you alone with him every night for a week.
I know, Papa, but you told me to watch the furnace.
You mean you had trouble with the guy or the furnace?
Both. Every time I watched one of them, the other would go out.
Well, tell me, my little pumpkin, what do you consider the ideal man?
That's easy. Just give me the eyes of Tyrone Power.
Yes, go on.
And give me the lips of Charles Boyer.
Yes, go on.
That's all, Papa. Just give me the lips of Charles Boyer. Whoopee!
Well, don't worry your pretty little flat head, daughter. I've got a feller all paid out for you. Handsome little schlemiel called Aladdin. With his money, we'll be able to pay off the mortgage on the old throne.
When's he dropping over, Papa?
He'll be arriving in a few minutes, daughter. How's about dinner? I'm hungry.
I'm cooking up a little borscht, Papa.
Good.
It'll be ready real soon.
Fine. What time do we line up at the trough? Gad loose. Here comes Aladdin on his magic carpet. Hey, take a powder, gal. I'll handle him.
Hiya, Pop. What's cooking?
Sounds what impudence. Throw yourself before me, vessel.
What? And slop up my flopsy-mopsy slack suit?
Throw yourself at my feet, knave. Well, goodness, don't bust your bustle, kid.
I have come as you commanded, old Salt.
Oh, so. Oh, yes. Aladdin, how would you like to marry my daughter? How would you like to live in connubial felicity?
Does the bus stop there?
Twice a week. If you marry my daughter, this lamp I shall give you, this magic lamp.
Oh, lamps like that are sure extinct.
I know, but you can always leave the windows open.
Okay, give me the lamp.
And remember, my lad, with this lamp you can have anything you want. Just rub the lamp, make your wish, and your wish is gratified. Go ahead, try it.
Okay, here goes. Well, look who's here.
Is that you, Mr. Benny?
Say, who are you?
It's the genie of the lamp, master. I'm your slave. Your wish is my command, sir.
Okay, let me rub that lamp again. Gold. Gold. I want gold.
There you is, boss.
Ooh. Gold. Gold. More gold.
Why? Oh. How'd that clicker get in there?
Well, I'll rub some more. I want gold. 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 Hey, what's the matter?
The machine is tilted, boss.
There you are, Aladdin, my love, my husband-to-be. Yippee!
Say, didn't I see you wrestle at the garden last week, sister?
Could be. Aladdin, this is my little daughter, Jennifer, your future wife. What have you to say to that?
Help! Hey, what makes her face so green?
My face isn't green, you silly boy. It just looks green in certain light.
Yes, daylight and electric light. Well, will you marry her or won't you?
Well, I'll think about it.
If you think about it, you won't marry her. She really has a beautiful soul. Lift up your foot, daughter, and show him.
Yeah, before I give my answer, there's just one thing I'd like to ask you about your daughter.
Yes? What is it?
That's what I was going to ask you. Well, tell me. Tell me, is she smart?
Is she smart? Just look at this report card.
Sultana Reform School.
Oh, no, not that one. Excuse me. This one. She was only in the 3rd grade, too.
Oh, not bad. What's this note written on the margin? Please have your daughter shaved before coming to school.
That's too late, you know. She's a whiz at mathematics. I'll show you. Now, daughter.
Yes, Papa?
If I subtract 50 from 100, what is the difference?
That's what I say. Who cares?
No.
Kiss me, Al.
I've been wanting to kiss you, but one thing stops me.
Yes?
Well, I hate to ask you, but...
Well, go ahead. For you, I would do anything.
Well, will you take off that catcher's mask first?
But I'm not wearing a catcher's mask.
That does it. Where's that genie?
Yes, boss. Yeah, you all crave something?
Yeah, I crave to get out of here. You can have the lamp. If I have to marry a puss like that, I'd rather live in the dark.
Oh, but, boss, don't forget every wish can be gratified.
Say, that's right. Okay, Jeannie, rub that lamp and make this gargoyle beautiful.
I sure will, boss. How beautiful you want her?
Oh, I don't care. Suit yourself.
Suit myself? Okay, here we go.
Well, shut my mouth, cat. Why's that ever-loving genie of mine? Yeah.
Hey, Jeannie, what have you done? You double-crossed me. I told you to make her beautiful.
You told me to suit myself, didn't you?
Yeah, but gee...
Man, this suits me. Sweetheart Me being played by Irv and his relatives, and I'd like to say that was swell. I'd like to say that was great, but I'd like to, but I'd only be lying, so I'll see you.
Mind if I intrude now, Demetrius?
Not at all, Ellery. Glad to have you.
Oh, kind of you as usual.
I mean it. I'm so delighted I can't find words to express myself.
Where do you want to go?
Well, I'm not sure, but I must be going by boat because I'm on my way to the dock.
Oh, I didn't know you were sick.
Oh, I'm not. It's the prisoner's dock. I have a case in court. Someone slapped a plaster on me.
Oh, a court plaster.
Yes. Oh, yes. I must get the court plastered, but I mustn't forget to paper the Spanish walls.
The what?
Spanish walls.
Spanish walls? Oh, I'd love to.
Right. Well, neighbors, looks like we've swept all the corners and dusted the cobwebs off another one, but we'll be back digging stuff out of the storehouse and trying to rearrange it the way you like it about the same time tomorrow.
Whole gang will be helping out. Irving Miller, Gay Seabrook, Don Reed, Julie Conway, Bob Sherry, Sad Sam, the sound man, the lads of the band. So give us a hand, won't you?
Thanks for letting us come in and muss up your house today, folks. Thanks for your nice cards and letters and all that kind of stuff like that there. Take mighty good care of yourselves, neighbors, and say, don't forget to keep on buying those war bonds and stamps. You hear me?
Till tomorrow, then. This is Bill Gray.
And Jack Kirkwood asking you to wait for that call.
Hey!
Are you listening?
Show, write for tickets, address your letters to Mirth and Madness, NBC, Radio City, New York. Mirth and Madness, written by Jack Kirkwood and produced by Jack Hill, is presented from New York City. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
The mightiest war machine in history is now storming Hitler's Europe. NBC will interrupt its regular programs for the latest invasion bulletins as they come off the wire. Stay tuned to WEAF, New York.
Adelaide Hawley says,
Household hints, how to sabotage the Nazis.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to another Adelaide Hawley program. On this day, after the day which made so much history, it makes my daily presentation of the historical facts seem superfluous. And yet the one I found for today isn't far out of line. 4 years ago, on the 7th of June, 1940, the Norwegian army capitulated to the invading Germans. Well, today the shoe is on the other foot, not only for Norwegians, but for all invaded peoples. I think Adelaide's going to have something to say about that, particularly about what women of the United Nations are thinking and doing today. Am I right, Adelaide?
Good morning, Clyde. And how do you do, everybody? Yes, I do have news of United Nations women this morning, and I think you will find it as inspiring and comforting as I did. And certainly it's fresh news because it came direct to me, and it's different from the things the men commentators have been telling us about because, understandably, they've been concerned with the men's side of things.
Well, may I suggest a sponsor message before you begin, Adelaide?
Well, of course, Clyde. Shall we urge everyone listening, everyone with a man in the service, to have his or her picture taken right away to send to the camps, the battle stations, or the fronts. Fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, wives, send your service representative a picture as soon as possible. If you live too far away from the Bachrach studio at 683 Fifth Avenue to make an appointment there, well, then have a picture taken somewhere, but do send a picture. It does a world of good to be able to look at the folks back home.
Or if some of you can't get to the Bachrach studio for a right-away picture, you probably would still like to see the portrait type of picture for which Bachrach is famous. So why not send your name and address to Adelaide Hawley, WEAF, New York, and she'll arrange for you to receive your Bachrach booklet so that you can see for yourself.
Well, the very lovely reproductions of fine Bachrach photographs that you find in this booklet owe part of their perfection to the extreme care that Bachrach photographers take when you sit before their camera. Even before the camera sees you, you know, a professional stylist does. That is, if you're on the feminine side of the picture. And if you want the stylist's advice on lipstick, eyebrows, eye makeup, and hairstyles, well, it's all yours for the asking.
Yes, that's why Bachrach photographs are so natural and beautiful. They sometimes take a bit of living up to. But that's not hard to do inasmuch as the stylist makes a complete chart of beauty hints for you. It's made for you, and it's yours. So why not call Bachrach today at 683 Fifth Avenue and make an appointment? Or, if that's impossible, remember to write for that booklet.
I didn't have the chance to talk to you listeners yesterday as much as I wanted to, but I thought about you, and I wondered how you were feeling now that the time we dreaded and yet wanted has come. You know, I tried to analyze my own feelings, and I found that, well, I simply wanted to move a little faster and dig into a lot of work that I'd been putting off. And maybe it was my imagination, but I thought people on the street were moving a little faster and a little more purposefully. Did you notice that, Clyde?
Yes, I did, Adelaide.
And every time I stopped doing something, I found myself feeling the way you do when you keep your fingers crossed over something. And I kept thinking sort of wordless prayers, and I'm sure all of you did, too. Yesterday I went into a lunch counter just to pick up a bite of lunch, and I'd been going around asking people all day how they felt. And so there was a gray-haired woman sitting beside me, and I asked her how she felt now that the D-Day had come, and she said, well, she had a son who'd been stationed in England, so she was trying to keep her mind away from the invasion until its success was unquestioned. The way you do when you love a person who's very sick, you don't even want the weight of your thought to be added to the burden until the crisis has passed. That's the way she explained it. And then this casual acquaintance went on to give me more of a lesson in philosophy. She said, oh, yes, I pray, but I don't pray for my boys' safety only. I try to pray for the most possible protection for all of them and for the final triumph of good. Now, wasn't that a wonderful thing to get in the lunch counter, Clyde?
Very.
I thought so. And then I went to pay my check, and there was a young girl chatting with the cashier. And just as I came up, the cashier said, well, what are you going to do this summer now that school is out? And the girl's reply was, oh, I'm just going to loaf. And she was a girl who was obviously old enough to join the Cadet Nurse Corps, and certainly she was hale and hearty enough to work with the Women's Land Army or volunteer for civilian hospital service or Red Cross work or any one of a dozen places where she's needed.
Don't you think, though, that she's an exception?
I hope so. I know that every woman with somebody actually in service, if it's only a dear friend, is saying silent prayers and working harder than ever today at whatever her job is. You who are at home are taking comfort from the old familiar chores that have to be done in the kitchen. Isn't it funny how washing dishes or beating a rug or beating up a cake can take you over a tough emotional spot? Or concentrating on the patriotic business of making every bit of food count, something like that.
You know, the women of the European underground certainly know what it is not to waste anything. I can't help thinking what a great help a basic food like our old-style bread would be to all those hungry men, women, and children.
That's true. Of course, that makes it easy to understand why American homemakers who are old-style fans also qualify as non-wasters of the favorite family food. Did you ever notice that when the man in uniform comes back on furlough, one thing that makes him feel at home immediately is to let him forage in the icebox and make himself some sandwiches and serve him some coffee with them?
The sandwiches made with old-style bread have old-fashioned flavor in every slice. One reason for old-style's tempting taste is its true wheat flavor, reminding you of golden, hearty grain kernels.
Well, some of the most enjoyable luncheons, Clyde, as well as other meals of the day, have been built around old-style sandwiches, old-style bread, because every smart homemaker knows what a wonderful addition that home-baked flavor makes to any kind of eating.
And old style tastes like homemade bread because it's made from a genuine woman's recipe and allowed to rise overnight. So anyone who has ever tried old style is sure to use all of its goodness in one delicious form or another.
Yes, Grandma knew a good loaf when she made one, and we now know the modern counterpart of Grandma's baking. It's old style bread.
You can buy old style bread, the standby of every meal, at any one of the friendly Bohack food department stores in Brooklyn and Long Island. By the way, Adelaide, your speaking of the girl who was planning to loaf this summer made me think that she wouldn't exist in any country actually mobilized on a wartime basis, would she?
I should say not. Why, in England, even the younger school children are organized for vacation work. They're part of the Land Army, of course, among many other activities, but perhaps the most amazing thing is the volunteer work they do for the Royal Army Ordnance Corps. They'll do this year, as they did last summer, handle thousands and thousands of shipping tons of supplies for the Army, unloading trucks, checking, packing, counting everything from clothing to nuts and bolts. They don't get paid for it, you know. And then there are 600 girls working somewhere in England, girls whose average age is a little older, about 17, and they're doing very dangerous work for the Ministry of Supply as chemical analysts. They check every batch of explosive before it goes into the shell casings.
Well, Adelaide, any women taking part in the actual invasion, do you think?
Well, I think you know that, Clyde. You know certainly that the nurses always go with the troops, but this time they're not going to be the only ones. The British estimate that something like, I think it's 200,000 ATs will take part in the invasion, are taking part in it right now. The ATs, of course, are the equivalent of our WACs. They call them the Auxiliary Territorial Service, I think it is. And the first of them went ashore as soon as a beachhead was established. Those were the ones in the Signals and Communications branch. And next went drivers, clerks, and cooks to drive and repair motor equipment, handle records of supplies and Army pay books and so on, and to cook. And our own WACs have been in England for 2 years, living at Allied Women's Headquarters, and I think it's reasonable to suppose that they'll have first-hand invasion news to tell their grandchildren, too. And certainly the trained girl workers of the OWI will be much in demand in the field of communications. And, let's see, isn't it amazing? This is probably the first time in history that women, as an actual part of an army, have gone in with an invasion.
I should think the women would be quite thrilled.
I imagine they are. And the canteen workers of all countries will have plenty to do. In England, they call them the NAFIs, you know.
NAAFIS. That's the one I hadn't heard, Adelaide.
Well, it stands for Navy, Army, and Air Force Institute. And there are 2,000 of them volunteered to do canteen work right up close to the firing line. And then the YMCA will have girls taking care of mobile canteens, too. And they'll not only know how to serve tea and cakes with a smile, they'll know how to fix the truck when it breaks down. You know, these women all make me feel like a sissy.
Well, the home front women in England are just as energetic, of course.
Oh, my goodness, yes. The girls who do ENSA work, that's Entertainment National Service Association, same as our USO. Certain selected and tried and true members of that organization are ready and waiting with their prettiest washable evening dresses all packed, ready to follow the troops with special entertainment units as soon as the canteen girls get rest billets established. I wonder if any invasion was ever thought out in such detail as this one. Why, even the girls who work in government offices in London are all set to live and eat right in their offices in case the transportation system breaks down because of needs for the second front. And housewives are all stocked up with emergency foods as much as possible in case there should be reprisal air raids from Germany so that they won't upset things by going out and standing in line, getting in the way.
You know, I imagine the air raid service in England is taken a lot more seriously than it is by some of the members of ours here.
Yes, well, it has to be. Every air raid warden is on tiptoe over there with preparation. And then the women who belong to the Women's Voluntary Services are doing a magnificent job. So are ours here, incidentally. But over there, they're catching up on loose ends everywhere, trying to foresee every emergency, getting everything wrapped up and labeled before it happens, you might say. It's the kind of intense preparation that we just can't comprehend over here, never having had a real emergency cracking a whip over us. But, of course, it's not the British women alone in Europe who are ready.
Well, I know you have something to say about other United Nations women, Adelaide, but May I just say a final word for a sponsor?
Well, of course.
Well, this is the time of year when there's never enough space to store all those winter woolens, those heavy blankets, those messy odds and ends.
Ah, yes. Well, I can't think of any better way to solve your space and storage problems than with Easy Do closets and chests and wardrobes. Now, that style called roller chest, for instance, is grand because it rolls so easily wherever you want to store it. And then there's the Easy Do glide chest that glides right under the bed and out of the way. And both the roller chest and the glide chest are easy, just as easy to move as their names would have you believe. And at the same time, they're sturdy and unusually roomy.
Well, for any of our listeners who haven't seen these two grand Easy Do products, you have a pleasant surprise in store. The roller chest is high, wide, and handsome. The glide chest is extremely long and wide, yet high enough to fit comfortably under a bed.
Yes, you can tell by Clyde's descriptions of the roller chest and the glide chest that they're both perfect for storing blankets and woolens and clothing. And while you're putting your winter things away, you probably have an urge to do a bit of redecorating, too?
Well, in that case, we have just the booklet you need, the Easy Do booklet that you can have simply by sending a postcard with your name and address to Adelaide Hawley, WEAF, Radio City, New York.
Yes, you might send that postcard to me, Adelaide Hawley, WEAF, Radio City, New York, and ask for both the Easy Do booklet and the Bachrach booklet.
Well, now, what about the women of Holland and Belgium and some of the occupied countries?
Oh, you can be sure that they're doing all they possibly can. Of course, not too much is known about them because a good many of their activities are carried on in the underground. But in the Netherlands, the women are hiding and feeding the men who do the fighting. Incidentally, underground Dutchmen are referred to in a phrase in Dutch, which means being on the bicycle, because that's the only way they can get around. The women in the university towns of Delft and Amsterdam also hide and feed the students who have refused to attend German that's a very good word, isn't it?
Germinated is very good.
Yes, German-dominated classrooms is what I was going to say. In many places, they've turned printers and typesetters, publishing underground newspapers. But perhaps the most outstanding characteristic of the Dutch woman is her stubborn resistance to the Nazis in every way that she dares. And then I think I might just mention about the Norwegian women, inasmuch as June 7th is the anniversary of the fall of Norway in 1940, as you said, Clyde. I think the story of Norway indicates that a woman's strength is, a country's strength, is certainly no greater than its women. In Norway, the most important underground work has been done in the kitchen by the housewife. Hunger and starvation would have been far worse had it not been for the resourceful meals turned out by the housewives from their tiny store of potatoes and bread, plus sometimes a bit of fish. And women have proved and are proving to be good at the tough routine jobs that the underground requires. I think all these women of the United Nations can give us great courage and inspiration and strength. And incidentally, tomorrow we're going to have a guest who was a member of the underground in France to tell of his actual experiences. And now, until we meet again, goodbye.
Goodbye, too, from Clyde Cattell. But both Adelaide Hawley and I'll be with you again tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Adelaide Hawley's program has been a WEAF presentation. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Station WEAF, New York.
It's time to say hello. I'd like to let you know each time that we meet, these moments are sweet, my dear one.
Yes, it's time to say hello to Alice Cornell with her soothing way of singing and playing. So sit back and relax for a few minutes, hear your favorite songs, and have a memory or two.
A tune that is old, a melody new, I'll sing for you.
Hello there.
You may easily carry on with whatever you're doing. You see, the whole idea in back of these next 15 minutes is to help you carry on with your morning routine by giving you only the music you requested to hear. And I'm mighty glad I've been chosen to sing and play them for you. For it's an honor, and it certainly is a pleasure. Here's your first one.
Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. Blue moon, you knew just what I was there for. You heard me saying a prayer for someone I really could care for. And then there suddenly appeared before me the only one my arms will ever hold. I heard somebody whisper, please adore me. And when I looked, the moon had turned to gold. Blue moon, now I'm no longer alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. And then there suddenly appeared before me the only one my arms will ever hold. I heard somebody whisper, please adore me. And when I looked, the moon had turned to gold. Blue moon, now I'm no longer alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own.
There's a musical playing on Broadway now called Dream with Music. And believe me, that show is a beautiful dream. Wish you could all see it. To those of you who have, here's your request for the hit ballad from Dream with Music, Love at Second Sight.
I didn't look twice when I first saw you. But maybe if I'd had second sight, I'd have noticed the day that my heart behaved, and the time that we've wasted we might have saved. For now I've looked twice, and now I see you. The future is clear, the land is bright, and heaven is nearer. And if I've reckoned right, I'm falling in love at second sight. If I'd noticed the day my heart behaved, and the time that we've wasted we might have I'm falling in love at second sight.
colored citizens of our country have done well in popularizing certain melodies that have gone down in musical history as the best love songs. This request has arrived from all over every state in the Union, I believe, including our friends in Canada, who wish to hear Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home, a band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home, just tell all my friends I'm a-coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Carry me home.
The name Nick Kinney is very familiar to millions of people because of his popular radio column in one of our New York newspapers. Also because of his success as a composer of songs and poems. Mr. Kinney has graciously given me the permission to read this poem to you on my program. It's titled, They Call Me Radio. I am a giant, old as time, yet young to you on earth. You've just begun to feel my strength, but do not grasp my worth. The sun and the moon are known to me. I gossip with the stars. I plumb the ocean's farthest depths and laugh at man-made bars. I roam through mountains, streams, and lakes, forever on the go, unmarked by time, a guard of space. They call me Radio. Now may I sing and play another of our best love songs. My
your voice, the touch of your hand. Just long to know that you understand, my buddy, my buddy, your buddy misses you.
'Tis time now for one of your favorite current hits. You might as well hum along, too, 'cause by now you're quite familiar with this melody. I wish that I could hide inside this letter and seal me up and send me out to you. What a surprise in store, they'd bring me to your door. I'd pop right out and kiss you like you've never been kissed before. We'd be so happy we could cry together, and then we'd love the way we used to do. I wish that I could hide inside this letter and seal me up and send me out to you. I wish that I could hide inside this letter and seal me up and bring me out to you. What a surprise in store, they'd bring me to your door. I'd pop right out and kiss you like you've never been kissed before. And we'd be so happy if we could cry together. And then we'd love the way we used to do. I wish that I could hide inside this letter and seal me up and send me out to you. Well, I wish that I could hide inside this radio. But that's only wishing. So I'll meet you tomorrow, the same time.
We interrupt this program to bring you the latest invasion news. Here is Elmer Peterson.
German long-range guns in the Pas-de-Calais area have turned loose a violent barrage against Dover and the Dover area. Approximately 40 rounds of heavy-caliber shells fell in the Dover-Folkestone area across a distance of 21 miles. This renewed shelling of the British coast comes at the same time as Nazi reports that Allied amphibious troops have attempted a new invasion of France directly across the narrow straits of Dover. There is no Allied confirmation for this German reports. In fact, our own headquarters say simply that they have no comment to make. However, this report indicates Nazi fears of new Allied landings. It also calls new attention to the general belief that Allied strategy may be expanded shortly into new offensives. Another item of late news is the first specific report of our losses from airborne operations. 12 C-47 troop carriers and 12 gliders were lost last night.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Tune to WEAF for the up-to-the-minute coverage of the invasion and the latest bulletins as they come off the wire.
Two hours earlier than usual, we are presenting at this time The Corwin Show, starring Charles Lawton. We will interrupt the broadcast for any late news developments.
Man is a long time coming. Man will yet win. Brother may yet line up with brother.
Columbia presents Corwin. From Hollywood, Norman Corwin brings you the first of three broadcasts entitled An American Trilogy, starring the eminent actor Charles Lawton, in special adaptations of the works of three American writers, Carl Sandburg, Thomas Wolfe, and Walt Whitman. Each program will be narrated by Mr. Lawton and scored by Bernard Herrmann. Tonight, Charles Lawton and Norman Corwin's production of Sandburg.
Nothing we can part with. Nothing we can say goodbye to. Nothing of material and practical contribution is to be mentioned for comparison with the pouring out of the blood of our picked and chosen youth on altars dedicated to national existence and the rainbow hopes of the four freedoms. Death carries majesty. The dust of vanished youth can be sacred. The phantom of a good fighting man can come back asking,
How goes the flag I fought for? Has any man's dream of a better world been helped?
Who do you think you are? Where do you think you come from? From toenails to the hair of your head, you're mixed of the earth, of the air. Listen to the laboratory man tell you what you are, what you're made of, man. Listen while he takes your part.
Weighing 150 pounds, you hold 3,500 cubic feet of gas, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. From the 22 pounds and 10 ounces of carbon in you is the filling for 9,000 lead pencils. In your blood are 50 grains of iron, and in the rest of your frame, enough iron to make a spike that would hold your weight.
You're a walking drugstore. And a cosmos. And a phantasmagoria treading a lonesome valley. One of the people. One of the people. Seeing sun, fog, zero weather. Seeing fire, flood, famine. Having meditations. One of the people. Yes, the people. A seething of saints and sinners, toilers, loafers, oxen, apes, the one and only source of armies, navies, work gangs, the living, flowing breath of the history of nations, the little family of man hugging the little ball of earth. The root holds of the earth nourish the majestic people. And new generations with names never heard of plow deep in broken drums, piling revolt on revolt across night valleys, letting loose insurrections, uprisings, plodding in a somnambulism of fog and rain, till a given moment exploded by long-prepared events. You can drum on immense drums the monotonous daily motions of the people. On immense drums you can drum the monotonous daily motions of the people, taking from earth and air their morsels of bread and love, a carryover from yesterday into tomorrow. You can blow on great brass horns the awful clamors of war and revolution when swarming anonymous shadow shapes obliterate old names, big names, and cross out what was and offer what is on a fresh blank page.
Across the bitter years, the deathless dream will be the stronger. The dream of equity will win.
Each man pictures his hell or heaven different. Some have snug, home-like heavens, suburban, well-kept. Some have a wild, storm-swept heaven. Their happiness has been in storms. Heaven must have storms mixed with fair weather. And hell, for some, is a jail. For others, a factory. For others, kitchen. For others, a place of many polite liars. What kind of a liar are you? People lie because they don't remember clear what they saw. People lie because they can't help making a story better than it was, the way it happened. People tell white lies so as to be decent to others. People lie in a pinch, hating to do it, but lying on because it might be worse. And people lie just to be liars for a crooked personal gain. What sort of a liar are you? A liar lies to nations. A liar lies to the people.
Hitler, April the 1st, 1939. The German people have no thought of invading any country.
A liar takes the blood of the people and drinks this blood with a laugh and a lie.
Hitler, September the 30th, 1942. We shall take Stalingrad. You may depend upon it. And you can be sure of the firm conviction that no human being shall ever push us away from that spot.
This liar is an old one. We know him many years. He's as straight as a dog's hind leg. He's as straight as a corkscrew. He's as white as a black cat's foot at midnight. Who shall speak for the people? Who knows the works from A to Z so he can say,
I know what the people want.
when have the people been half as rotten as what the panderers to the people dangle before crowds?
Step right up and get your panicle. Cures cancer, flat feet, heart disease, gallstones, and dandruff, $1 a bottle. Together with a year's membership in the German-American Bund, guaranteed to cure patriotism, make you hate Jews, love General Franco, and lose friends, all for $1.
When has the fiber of the people been as shoddy as what is sold to the people by cheaters? What is it the panderers and cheaters of the people play with and trade on? The credulity of believers and hopers. And when is a heart less of a heart because of belief and hope? What is the tremulous line between credulity on the one side and on the other the hypotheses and illusions of inventors, discoverers, navigators who chart their course by what they hope and believe is beyond the horizon? What is a stratosphere balloon 14 miles from the earth or a sunken glass house on the sea bottom? Unless a bet that man can shove on beyond yesterday's record of man, the hoper, the believer. How like a sublime sanctuary of human credulity is that room where amid tubes, globes, and retorts, they shoot with hydrogen and batter with fire streams of power, hoping to smash the atom.
The constitution of the neutral atom can be studied by hypothecating a process by which N electrons are captured and bound in the field of force surrounding...
Who are these bipeds trying to take apart the atom and isolate its electrons and make it tell why it is what it is?
Believers and hopers.
Let the work of their fathers and elder brothers be canceled this instant, and what would happen?
Nothing. Only every tool, bus, car, bulb, print, film, instrument, depending for its life on electrodynamic power, would stop and stand dumb and silent.
Believers and hopers. Hope. Hope is a tattered flag and a dream out of time. The evening star, inviolable over the coal mines. The shimmer of northern lights across a bitter winter night. The blue hills beyond the smoke of the steelworks. The 10-cent crocus bulb blooming in a used car sales room. The horseshoe over the door. the luck piece in the pocket, and the kiss, and the comforting laugh. Hope is an echo. Hope ties itself yonder. I have looked over the earth and seen the swarming of different people to a different God. White men with prayers to a white God.
Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in thy righteousness. Bow down thine ear to me. Deliver me speedily. Be thou my strong rock.
Black men with prayers to a black God. Yellow faces before altars to a yellow-faced God. Amid burning fires, they have pictured God with a naked skin. Amid frozen rocks, they have pictured God clothed and shaggy as a polar bear. I have met stubs of men broken in the pain and mutilation of war, saying, God is forgetful, too far off, too far away. I have met people saying they talked with God face to face. They tell God.
Hello, God. How are you, God?
They get familiar with God and hold intimate conversations. Yet I have met other people saying,
I am afraid to see God face to face, for I would ask questions, even as God might ask me questions.
I have seen these facts of God and man, an anxious earthworms hunting for a home. I have seen the spotted sunset sky filled with flights and wings, and I have heard high in the twilight blue the propellers of Man in the Evening airmail droning from Omaha to Chicago, droning across Iowa and Illinois. I have said, the prints of many new wings, many fresh flights, many clean propellers shall be on the sky before we understand God and the works of wings and air. In the casual drift of routine, in the day-by-day run of mine, in the play of careless circumstance, the anecdotes emerge. Alive with people, in words, errands, motives, and silhouettes. Taller than the immediate moment, the anecdotes emerge.
Is it far to the next town?
It seems farther than it is, but you'll find that it ain't.
Sergeant, if a private calls you a darn fool, what would you do?
I'd throw him in the guardhouse.
If he just thinks you're a darn fool and doesn't say it, then what?
Nothing.
We'll let it go at that.
Get off this estate.
What for?
Because it's mine.
Where did you get it?
From my father.
Where did he get it?
From his father.
And where did he get it?
He fought for it.
Well, I'll fight you for it.
Which way to the post office, boy?
I don't know.
You don't know much, do you?
Nope, but I ain't lost. What do you know? The number 42, which I picked as a winner, won the raffle.
Did you guess the number 42, or did you have a system?
I had a system.
What was it?
I took up the old family album, and they're on page 7 with my grandmother and grandfather, both on page 7. And I said to myself, this is easy. For 7 times 7 is the number that'll win. And 7 times 7 is 42.
I see.
What was the last thing Paul Revere said to his horse on the famous ride?
Whoa. Too bad you have to work in this kind of a soup parlor, waiter.
I work here, customer, but I don't eat here.
Isn't that an iceberg on the horizon, Captain?
Yes, madam.
What if we get into a collision with it?
The iceberg, madam, will move right along as though nothing had happened.
No, I tell you, no. No, I tell you, no. No, I tell you, no.
Pardon me, but what are you yelling for?
I'm a yes man taking a vacation. No, I tell you, no.
Have you a criminal lawyer in this burg?
We think so, but we haven't been able to prove it on him.
I hear a burglar in the house.
Well, let's wait. If he finds anything worth stealing, we'll take it away from him.
The anecdotes emerge. Alive with people in words, errands, motives. Taller than the immediate moment. The people laugh. The people sing. The gang in its working clothes, the picnic bunch in its best bib and tucker, Hicks from the Sticks and Big Town Hicks. They sing whatever they want to. And it may be the old rugged cross, or the old gray mare, or a late hit. They are hit by the hit songs. It's only a hit when it hits them. They soon drop it like a hot potato, or they hold on to it for keeps. And whenever they keep changing a song with tunes twisted 40 ways and new verses you never heard of, at last, then, it's a folk song.
Many long years ago, many long years ago, many long years ago.
He was in Cincinnati, she in Burlington. He was in a gang of postal telegraph linemen. She was a pot wrestler in a boarding house. She wrote him.
The crying is lonely.
He answered.
The same here.
The winter went by, and he came back, and they married. And he went away again where rainstorms knocked down telegraph poles and wires dropped with frozen sleet. And again she wrote him.
The crying is lonely.
And again he answered.
The same here.
Their 5 children are in the public schools. He votes and is a taxpayer. They are known among those who know them as honest American citizens living honest lives. Many things that bother other people never bother them. They have their 5 children, and they're a couple. A pair of birds that call to each other and satisfy. As sure as he goes away, she writes him.
The crying is lonely.
And he flashes back the old answer.
The same here.
It's a long time since he was a gang lineman at Cincinnati, and she was a pot wrestler in a Burlington boarding house. Yet they never get tired of each other. They're a couple. Yes, the machine. Never wastes anybody's time. Never watches the foreman. Never talks back. Never says what is right or wrong. The machine, yes, the machine, cuts your production cost. A man is a man, and what can you do with him? A man is a man, and what can you do with him? But a machine. Now you take a machine, no kids, no woman, never hungry, never thirsty. All a machine needs is a little regular attention and plenty of grease. And plenty of grease. And plenty of grace. And plenty of grace. A father sees a son nearing manhood. What shall he tell that son?
Life is hard. Be steel. Be a rock.
And this might stand him for the storms and serve him for humdrum and monotony and guide him amid sudden betrayals and tighten him for slack moments.
Life is a soft loam. Be gentle. Go easy.
And this, too, might serve him. Brutes have been gentled where lashes failed. The growth of a frail flower in a path up has sometimes shattered and split a rock. A tough will counts. So does desire. Tell him too much money has killed men and left them dead years before burial. The quest of lucre beyond a few easy needs has twisted good enough men sometimes into dry, thwarted worms. Tell him time as a stuff can be wasted. Tell him to be a fool every so often and to have no shame over having been a fool, yet learning something out of every folly, hoping to repeat none of the cheap follies, thus arriving at intimate understanding of a world numbering many fools. Tell him to be alone often and get at himself, and above all, tell himself no lies about himself, whatever the white lies and protective fronts he may use amongst other people. Tell him solitude is creative if he's strong, and the final decisions are made in silent rooms. Tell him to be different from other people if it comes natural and easy being different. Let him have lazy days seeking his deeper motives. Let him seek deep for where he's a born natural. Then he may understand Shakespeare and the Wright brothers, Pasteur, Pavlov, Michael Faraday, and free imaginations bringing changes into a world resenting change. He'll be lonely enough to have time for the work he knows as his own. The people is a cauldron and reservoir of the human reserves that shape history. The people have the element of surprise. Where are the kings today? What has become of their solid and fastened thrones? Who are the temporary puppets holding sway while anything waits around a corner, sits in the shadows, and holds an axe, waiting for the appointed hour?
The Tsar has 8 million men with guns and bayonets. Nothing can happen to the Tsar.
They said that for years. As a portent and an assurance, they said with owl faces,
Nothing can happen to the Tsar.
Yet the Tsar and his bodyguard of 8 million vanished. And the Tsar stood in a cellar before a little firing squad. The command of fire was given. And the Tsar traveled into an ethereal, uncharted Siberia. While 2 Kaisers also vanished from thrones, ancient and established in blood and iron. 2 Kaisers backed by 10 million bayonets had their crowns in a gutter. In the shove and whirl of unforeseen combustions, the people, yes, the people, move eternally in the elements of surprise, changing from hammer to bayonet and back to hammer. The Hallelujah Chorus, forever shifting its star soloists. Who can fight against the future? What is the decree of tomorrow? Haven't the people gone on and on, always taking more of their own? How can the orders of the day be against the people in this time? Who can stop them from taking more and more of their own? The old anvil laughs at many broken hammers. There are men who can't be bought. The people will live on. The learning and blundering people will live on. Tricked and sold and again sold, they go back to the nourishing earth for root holds. The people, so peculiar in renewal and comeback, you can't laugh off their capacity to take it. Can the wilderness be put behind? Shall man always go on, dog eat dog? Who says so? The stronger, and who is the stronger? And how shall the stronger hold on as the stronger? Will tomorrow right?
Of the people, by the people, for the people.
What mockers ever wrung a crop from a waiting soil? Or when did cold logic bring forth a child? They asked a kite-flying sky gazer.
What use is
And he wished in return to know
What use is a baby?
the dreaming scholars who questioned the useless, who wanted to know merely for the sake of knowing. They sought and harnessed electrodynamic volts, becoming in time 30 billion horses in one country, becoming in time 30 billion horsepower. And is this an early glimpse, a dim beginning, the first hill in a series of hills? What comes after the spectrum? With what will the test tubes be shaken tomorrow? For what will the acetylene torch and pneumatic chisel be scrapped? What will the international partnerships of the world laboratories track down next? What new fuels, amalgams, alloys, seeds, crossbreeds, unforeseen shortcuts to power. Whose guess is better than anybody else's on whether the breed of fire-bringers is run out? Whether light rays, death rays, laugh rays, and now for us only in a dim beginning. Whither away? And where do we go from here?
Across the bitter years and the howling winters, the deathless dream will be the stronger. The dream of equity will come.
Man is a long time coming. Man will yet win. Brother will line up with brother.
You have been listening to Charles Lawton and Norman Corwin's adaptation and production of Sandburg, first of an American trilogy based on the works of three great modern writers. With Mr. Lawton in the cast were Hans Conried, Wally Mayer, Mercedes McCambridge, Dick Ryan, Joan Loring, Will Wright, Joe Granby, Lorene Tuttle, Bob Bruce, Norman Field, Earl Ross, Horace Willard, Peter Chong, Franklin Parker, Harry Bartell, Edward Marr, and Earl Robinson. Bernard Herrmann composed and conducted the original score. At this same time next week, CBS will bring you the second program of an American trilogy, Corwin's production of selections from the writings of Thomas Wolfe, again with an original score by Columbia's prize-winning Bernard Herrmann.
The Ironized East Big Town program was canceled tonight in order to bring you the previous broadcast. Big Town will be heard at this same time next week over these same stations. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Continuing its up-to-the-minute coverage of the invasion of Western Europe, CBS World News now brings you the latest news developments, followed by reports by its correspondents at home and abroad. First, for the latest news dispatches, here is John Daly.
Here is what we know officially about the progress of the invasion of Europe at this moment. The second communique from Supreme Allied Headquarters, issued early this evening Eastern War Time, told us that our forces succeeded in their initial landings and that fighting continues. Our landings were effected under cover of a heavy air and naval bombardment. We know officially that our naval casualties were light, much lighter than expected. President Roosevelt told his radio and press conference that up to noon today, Eastern War Time, United States naval losses were 2 destroyers and 1 landing ship for tanks. 2 rear admirals of the United States Navy were aboard cruisers which took part in the naval bombardment, which preceded the landings. Rear Admiral Alan Goodrich Kirk, commander of one of the task forces, watched the operations from his flagship, the cruiser Augusta, and Rear Admiral Morton L. Deo was in command of the cruiser Tuscaloosa. The American battleship Nevada paced the 4,000 Allied ships that made up the striking armada. We know officially, too, that more than 1,000 troop-carrying planes and gliders dropped Allied paratroopers and other airborne troops behind the German lines in France. The airborne phase of the operations met with what the Allied High Command described as unexpected success, and Prime Minister Churchill told the House of Commons earlier in the day that our parachute troops seized a number of vital bridges before the Germans had time to blow them up. Churchill gave the only official Allied indication of just where our troops landed and how far they have advanced. He announced that Allied invasion spearheads have penetrated the railroad town of Caen, 9.5 miles inland. But reports from the Germans indicate tonight that Allied forces have pushed inland from 7.5 to 10 miles at key points along a 60-mile front. And the British radio said we're 13 miles inland at one point north of Caen. While the official reports are heartening, but meager in detail, we do know from the reports of correspondents and Allied pilots who flew over the battle area that our progress appears to be good in every area. We know, too, that there have been no German counterattacks up to this time, although such attacks are expected momentarily. At 8 p.m. Eastern War Time, the German-controlled Paris radio said that an important American-British naval squadron was cruising off Cherbourg. CBS correspondent Charles Collingwood reports that we have already taken some German prisoners. He saw them line up at the end of one of our beachheads. At the same time, the first wounded men from the invasion front have landed back in England. And about them, we have this report. Despite their wounds, many were cheerful and smiling. To round out the unofficial reports on the invasion, the London Daily Mail says in a dispatch from Stockholm that Adolf Hitler is expected to make a speech soon from somewhere in the West, where he is said to be in personal command of the anti-invasion operations. And that's the best news we've had today, considering his record to date as a commander of the German forces in the field.
Now a picture of American fighting men and how they react in battle by one who has seen them in action. Here is Columbia's war reporter, Quentin Reynolds.
I know nothing about the master strategy of war, and it would be presumptuous for me to try to guess what will happen tomorrow or the next day. And I have no idea at all as to the final outcome of this most daring of all military operations. But I do know G.I. Joe. I saw him in action in Sicily and at Salerno, and I know his reactions. I know his hopes and his fears. I know that he has been looking forward eagerly to this test, just as he once looked forward to playing in a big high school football game. Oh, he was a bit nervous about it, but he knew that once it began, his nervousness would leave. It was tough for G.I. Joe crossing the channel last night, because he knew there were enemy minefields that had to be crossed. Then, sitting there on the deck of a ship, he had nothing to do but think. There was a chaplain on every large ship in the invasion armada. Chaplains learned during the Sicilian invasion, during the Salerno operation, at Anzio, that G.I. Joe doesn't want any sermons preached to him just before he goes into battle. He wants a pat on the back, and sometimes he wants to talk, to unburden himself. That's what G.I. Joe did last night. Just got to talking with the Padre. And it didn't matter much what faith the Padre belonged to. All chaplains wear the same uniforms, and there is only one God at the front. Then the invasion fleet neared the enemy coast. Now G.I. Joe tightened up. He examined his M3 submachine gun carefully, took it apart, put it together, fingered his clips of ammunition. He kept telling himself that he wasn't afraid. Tolstoy once said in War and Peace, "Every soldier is afraid that he will be weak at the decisive moment." Tolstoy was right. G.I. Joe felt that way. Well, they got near the enemy coast, and his nervousness increased. Maybe he lit a cigarette and then tossed it to the deck hurriedly when an officer called sharply, "Put that out." And then it was H hour. He was tumbling over the side into a waiting LCI. He had to steady himself because there was a slight swell, and he grinned weakly at his pals, indistinct in the thin dawn. They all felt as he did. It was like that at high school just before the kickoff. Then the boats started toward shore. There wasn't much opposition as they went toward the shore. The boat grounded a few feet from the beach, and G.I. Joe hopped out, keeping his gun high over his head, adjusting his steel helmet. The German mortars and machine gun fire opened up. He heard the bullets whistling past, and he ducked instinctively. Then he laughed sheepishly. There are no foxholes in the English Channel. He surged forward, and the cold water acted as a bracer. Then he hit land. Sappers attached to his company dashed ahead to be sure there were no mines. Now suddenly the nervousness left G.I. Joe. He looked coolly ahead, and when he saw a flash, he automatically lifted his Tommy gun and sprayed a clip of bullets toward it. Now his long training told. He did things, the right things, instinctively. He avoided booby traps and mines. He dashed from one bit of cover to another. When mortar shells began to drop close, he and his pals fanned out the way veterans do. They didn't bunch up in a tight group to be annihilated by one shell. They pressed on. After 5 hours, his officers told him to eat something. In his pocket was his cardboard box of K-rations, ham and eggs spread, and biscuits, concentrated chocolate, and best of all, cigarettes. It was light now, and he puffed his cigarette happily. He kept on advancing all afternoon. Just before darkness blanketed France, mess orderlies came up with cans of sea rations. G.I. Joe had to eat them cold, but that was all right. He had his meat and vegetable hash right out of the can. And he took out the powdered lemon he found there, added some water from his canteen, and had a tin cup full of pretty good lemonade. He munched a piece of chocolate, and he had a smoke, and he felt pretty good. A message had come through from General Montgomery. G.I. Joe loves Monty. You know why. He loves him because Monty always wins. We Americans like winners. G.I. Joe kidded with his pals about Monty's message. It promised him that he would have a hot meal in the morning, cooked by his own field kitchens, which would land during the night. That was good news. G.I. Joe grinned and said casually to his pal next to him, "It wasn't so tough after all, was it?" This morning, G.I. Joe was just another healthy young American kid. Tonight he's a soldier, a veteran, a man who has been tested and not found wanting. He looks forward to tomorrow with confidence. So should we. We should be mighty proud of these sons of ours. They're pretty wonderful.
Next, an analysis of the strategic and tactical aspects of the fighting. Columbia's military expert, Major George Fielding Elliott.
There is no use minimizing the stern and savage character of the fighting that lies ahead of our armies and their allies before they can hope to overcome the resistance of the German forces. The Germans are at bay. They are fighting for the last hope which remains for them, the hope of pushing back our invasion of Western Europe into the sea and then turning in full strength to check the coming Russian onslaught. It is not a very bright hope, but it is the only hope they have, and they will not give it up easily. There is one comforting thought which can sustain us as the battle is joined, and that is the fact that the present American army is the most capably commanded army which the United States has ever placed in the field at the outset of a war. And this is the real beginning of this war as far as large-scale land operations are concerned. Anyone who has ever read our military history will recall the cruel price which has been paid in the blood of our young men in order to prove the incapacity of political generals or of superannuated generals or of just plain stupid generals in all our preceding wars. Even in the War of 1917-18, when things were a lot better than they were in the Revolution or in 1812 or in the Civil War or the Spanish War, there still had to be a considerable process of testing, of trial and error and elimination before some of the incapable general officers of that time were gotten rid of. In this war, matters are very different. I don't mean to say that all our general officers are perfect, or even that all of them are, in all respects, admirable leaders. But as a whole, they represent a far higher average of leadership and all-round military capability than the generals of any of our other wars at the beginning of the first major campaign. This is because they are picked men, because there has been applied to them, not on the battlefield, not at the price of blood, but beforehand, in training and in maneuver areas, a process of test and strain and of ruthless weeding out of the unfit, a process which in all our other wars had to wait for the actual fighting to begin. And this process has also been applied to junior officers by the simple means of insisting that generals should see to it that their juniors were efficient or cease to be generals on active service. Every American general who now commands a division, a corps, or an army of American troops has been put through this hard and unforgiving mill of trial. Those who have failed in any degree have been relegated to non-combat duties or to the retired list. And the higher the rank and responsibility, the more severe the test, the more exacting the requirements. Of course, this process is not 100% proof against error. Nothing can be in such matters as war leadership save the actual test of war itself. But it goes a long way, this process, toward eliminating the unfit before they get to the point where their unfitness can cost the lives of our young soldiers. Some, no doubt, will yet remain to be weeded out. But these will not be many, for most of those whose failings have been in any way demonstrated have been weeded out already. For this stern but highly necessary elimination of incapable leaders, the fathers and mothers and wives and sweethearts of the country have to thank the Chief of Staff of the Army, General George Marshall. Ever since he took over the duty of Chief of Staff, he has set himself determinedly to get rid of that class of high-ranking officer who always in time of peace seems to climb slowly up the ladder of seniority, and then when war comes, blocks the promotion of better men to the posts they are no longer capable of holding. General Marshall looked back on our past record, and he resolved that if war came in his time, he would not repeat that error at any rate. We have seen the result on many battlefields and in many parts of the world. We have seen a few generals fail and come home very promptly. We have seen the vast majority of them carry on with their tasks vigorously and capably, whether it be the task of commanders-in-chief such as Eisenhower and Stilwell, of Army commanders such as Clark and Kruger, or of Corps commanders such as Keyes and Prescott.
It is now D-Day +1 overseas. For a picture of England on this second day of the invasion, we take you now to London. Charles Shaw reporting.
This is Charles Shaw in London. It is D-Day +1 in London. It is 2:45 o'clock on the second morning of the invasion, and London is asleep after its biggest day in 4 years, its biggest day since Dunkirk. However, if you hadn't read the papers, if you hadn't heard the radio, if you had judged only by appearances and manners of the people, you wouldn't have known it was a big day. London took D-Day calmly and soberly. When I remarked about London's D-Day calm to a policeman tonight, he said, well, they're jubilant inside. A fellow American was with me, and after the policeman made his remark, the other American said, after all, you don't cheer the kickoff in a football game. You cheer the plays and the final score. From everybody who asked for comment about the news came a reply something like, it's good news. But usually the person questioned asked a question of his own. Is the latest news still good? Since we have landed in France, I thought the best place to dine tonight was a French restaurant, a favorite in London's Soho. Service was entirely as usual, and Paul, the head waiter, usually very verbose, wasn't over-communicative tonight. It's good news so far, he said. Let's hope for the best. A few tablecloth strategists were seated at nearby tables, showing their girlfriends on penciled maps of France on the linen how the fighting was going or should go. At another table, a woman was heard to remark, it's a shame that they've taken the limelight from General Alexander's show in Italy. He got all that criticism about the Anzio beachhead, and now that he's doing so well, nobody will pay any attention to him. She wasn't representative, of course, but hers was one of the voices of the evening. A taxi driver, wanting to know if the late news was still good, explained, I haven't been able to get a paper yet. The radio set still isn't standard equipment in British homes. Piccadilly Circus, sometimes called the crossroads of London, was much the same as usual, except there were fewer American soldiers about and fewer American MPs. A street hawker tried to entice buyers of squeaking, woolly toy dogs, but I saw no takers. In Piccadilly subway station, I was greeted by an American lieutenant wearing the wings of an aerial navigator. Noticing my war correspondent's uniform, he asked how the news was. I filled him in and expressed wonderment at the absence of the German Air Force from the beachheads. The navigator replied, I was over there yesterday. I've been over there the last week, and I didn't see many German planes either. But they've got some somewhere, and they've got some good ones, too. Along the subway tracks, empty beds awaited those who had occupied them since the London Blitz. Those men, women, and children who had been bombed out so many times or had been so shaken by the Blitz that they wouldn't dare spend a night at home. At early evening, the beds were empty. As darkness neared, their occupants began arriving. In fact, they arrived earlier than usual, and one of them told me, Jerry will sure come over here tonight. He didn't. Along Tottenham Court Road, men and women were seen carrying their tin helmets. They probably feared a bombing tonight, despite the news that the Germans failed to oppose our landings from the air. At 15 minutes to 9, the lobby of the Savoy Hotel looked normal. At 10 minutes to 9, not only the lobby, but the bars and other rooms began emptying into a spatial lounge where BBC broadcasts may be heard. They were gathering to hear the king, and they listened reverently. At the end, men and women rose sharply to stand while God Save the King was played. Since the king had exhorted his people to pray, I went to St. Paul's Cathedral to see whether any worshipers were gathered there. St. Paul's was closed. A sign proclaimed that Invasion Day prayers for victory had been scheduled for 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. today. Earlier in the day, the chief attraction was the House of Commons, where Mr. Churchill spoke twice. For his first speech, the only one I can talk about, the House was crowded, and there was some semblance of excitement. Although, as one reporter noted, it's often crowded and often excited for quite trivial occasions. The audience awaited Mr. Churchill, but the House of Commons ritual had to be obeyed. Questions that had been put down when invasion was still something to be guessed at came up for reply. Questions about laundries and about button polishing in Burma. Communist member Gallagher again demanded the abolition of banks. In all, 73 questions were asked, although at breakneck speed. Mr. Churchill didn't expect the questions to be answered so quickly, so there was a few minutes interval between the end of question time and the Prime Minister's arrival in the House. And not far away from the Prime Minister sat a man who occupied Mr. Churchill's present position 26 years ago. It was the venerable David Lloyd George, Britain's leader in World War I. He fixed Mr. Churchill with his eyes during the Prime Minister's entire speech, never glancing away until the statement had been finished. One effect of the invasion in London was to promote a sharp rise in the price of French railway bonds. These bonds are guaranteed by the French government. And so London spent D-Day, calmly and soberly in most part. It's true that there were long lines of would-be buyers for the afternoon papers when they appeared at the normal time this afternoon. No extras. It's true that the landings in France were the main conversation piece. But one of London's evening newspapers says, Londoners can never again deny their phlegmatic calm. The biggest news of this or any other war saw them plodding steadily about their business. Another taxi driver mentioned one sign of enthusiasm. He said, my tips were bigger today. They usually are when people feel bucked. No search for London attitude would be complete without a visit to a pub. Tonight, the pubs had the usual crowd of people drinking their mild and bitter or a drop of gin if there was any. At the exit of one pub, I noticed a yellowed sign, a remnant of 1940, when the shoe was on the other foot. It was Queen Victoria's famous remark, there is no depression in this house, and we are not interested in possibilities of defeat. They do not exist. This is Charles Shaw in London. I return you now to CBS in New York.
Next, Washington's latest news on the invasion. We take you now to Washington. Don Pryor reporting.
It wasn't a Washington show today at all, and the high command here has leaned over backwards to avoid any appearance of trying to take the headlines from General Eisenhower and his men. Actually, there was no more excitement in Washington today than there must have been in Keokuk. Just the remote, objective, and rather helpless excitement of men and women whose boys are over there with the chips down at last and the great adventure underway. And the temper of their feeling can be measured as accurately by the President's own personal reaction as in any other way. For several days, off and on, before this event, Mr. Roosevelt had been working on the wording of a D-Day prayer of liberation. Last night, he sat up very late, giving it the last fine touches while messages came pouring into the White House from General Eisenhower's headquarters. Mr. Roosevelt finished his prayer in the early morning, and when it became evident the first stage of the invasion had come off well, he went to bed and slept a little while. At 10 o'clock tonight, Eastern Wartime, the President will read his prayer to the nation in a broadcast over this network, and he has asked that all Americans join with him in that devotion. This afternoon, at his regular news conference, Mr. Roosevelt seemed very well pleased with the reports from France, but he added a sober warning that there is a long road yet ahead and a great deal of hardship and suffering. The same reaction was evident on Capitol Hill, where both the Senate and House opened their sessions today with a moment of silent prayer. But when it came to real news, Washington took a back seat. This is the world headquarters for the United Nations war. But now that this biggest of all operations is underway, all the top commanders prefer to leave the glory, the credit, and the power to the men who are shooting the guns. Like all the rest of us, these men of the high command feel that they must only wait now for the outcome and for General Eisenhower's reports. But they still have plenty to do. For to them, the invasion of Europe is only one phase of a war that covers the world. They must still plan, train men, and mass supplies for every theater. At noon today, Generals Marshall and Arnold and Admiral King called on the President and stayed with him in conference for an hour and a half. They seemed to be in high spirits, but they refused to talk, except for a very brief comment by Admiral King on behalf of the whole group. The invasion, he said, is going all right so far. The most popular subjects for discussion and speculation here today have been the Russians and the Japanese, except for the direct news from France, of course. Beyond this current battle, there are two uppermost questions in the minds of serious military men. When are the Russians going to open their final big drive from the east, and when will the next big news come from the Pacific? The speculation on those subjects would fill a good-sized volume, but so far it is only conjecture. There's full confidence here, however, that the Red Army will fulfill its promises in full measure. The only question now is when the blow will strike. As for the Pacific, there may be some interest in a story that was put out by British sources this afternoon. They said they had information that for every American ship in the Allied invasion in France, there were 3 British ships. That may be some pointed reminder that our vast naval force in the Pacific is still at top strength, unaffected by the attack in Europe, and ready for still greater blows against the Japanese. I return you now to New York.
The Judy Canova program, usually presented at this time over most of these stations by the Colgate-Palmolive Peat Company, was canceled tonight that we might present the special broadcast just concluded. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Here's 5 minutes of the latest news brought to you by Johns Manville. Tonight, because of the invasion, our entire time will be devoted to the news. Your reporter, Bill Henry.
General Eisenhower tonight issued a blunt communique which says that Allied forces have succeeded in their initial landings in France. Fighting continues. Losses have been less than expected. We are warned that the first enemy counterattacks may be expected within 48 hours. Behind those blunt words lies the story of the greatest trifibious attack of all time, a stupendous land, sea, and sky invasion so spectacular and dramatic that it has all but blotted out all other war news. The Allied forces in Italy, whose capture of Rome surely deserves to be remembered more than 24 hours, have now driven nearly 10 miles north of the Italian capital. American bombers from Italy, which landed in Russia the other day, made a tremendous attack on an airfield at Galatz in Romania today and returned to the Russian bases. Air activity continues in the Pacific. MacArthur's troops have resumed their advance on Biak Island, northwest of New Guinea. Bangkok has been heavily bombed, and we're still making slow progress in Burma. That's a quick roundup of the other war news. In Europe, the invasion effort commenced at midnight last night under forbidding skies. Bad weather, it is now known, had forced a 24-hour postponement of the invasion. The great black bombers of the RAF drew the honor of pulling out all the stops as the invasion organ roared to a mighty crescendo. In the first 8 hours of the day, the RAF, followed by our heavy bombers, poured the almost unbelievable total of 11,000 tons on the French coast. While the last bombs were still falling, the sky was further blackened by swarms of troop-carrying planes, from which grim shootists leaped at a given moment to seize vital areas such as bridges, road junctions, and open areas, in which by nightfall 1,000 troop-carrying planes and gliders had put a huge force estimated at 20,000 airborne troops on French soil. hundreds of tiny fighter craft. Their wings and bellies, striped black and white for identification purposes, swarmed like angry bees above and around the carriers. Meanwhile, offshore, a motley procession of shipping, thousands of them of all shapes and sizes, ranging from buzzing PT boats and grimy minesweepers to majestic battleships, ranged across the channel and formed offshore, the battle wagons adding to the mad din with their 16-inch shells, while smaller craft spun smoke screens to protect the invading American, British, and Canadian infantrymen. The American naval commander was Rear Admiral Alan Kirk, veteran of North African and Sicilian landing operations. In the battle line were the USS Nevada, survivor of Pearl Harbor, and HMS Warspite, scarred veteran of British naval triumphs from Narvik in Norway to the awful slaughter of Mussolini's sailors at Matapan in the Mediterranean. Forming up like flower girls and bridesmaids at a wedding, the landing craft made their way ashore and began the dual task of overcoming the German defenses while the men fought their way inland to a junction with the paratroopers and airborne forces. That, in brief, is a picture of D-Day across the Channel. As the situation stands tonight, we must rely on fragmentary items of information. It is now clear that the major effort of the first day entailed landing around the edges and inland at the base of the Normandy Peninsula, which has Cherbourg, the most important port in northern France, at its peak. All the way from Le Havre at the mouth of the Seine to Barfleur, very close to Cherbourg, we have made landings. To the west of the peninsula, we appear to have made landings on the beautiful Channel Islands of Jersey and Guernsey. Inland at the base of the peninsula, our airborne troops have landed at several places, and the focal point of fighting seems to be the ancient city of Caen, spelled C-A-E-N. It's about 10 miles from the Norman coast, and we have the word of Winston Churchill that our men were fighting inside the city late this afternoon. That completes the encirclement of the peninsula. D-Day has come and gone. We've had good initial success. The fate of the invasion still hangs in the balance. We can feel confident that our men are thoroughly trained, expertly led, and they have equipment second to none. Today, King George of England called for a nationwide vigil of prayer for the success of our arms. In this country, over this network, an hour from now, President Roosevelt will lead this nation in a prayer, the text of which has been published and in which he asks all of us to join. And now, here is Tony Marvin.
Bill Henry and the News was brought to you by Johns Manville. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.